Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fish Tank. My name's BadAsFish80 and today we're going to be talking about the patch notes for the upcoming Minion Masters expansion. It's going to be version 1.27. If you watched yesterday's video you would have seen a couple of new cards and a new skin, so we'll gloss over those and we'll talk about the balance changes to cards and masters. Now remember, this is a big patch because wildcards are being removed. If you're not familiar with wildcards, they are the ability for you to use more than one copy of a card. So you can have up to 3 copies of a single card or 2 copies of 2 cards in your deck. Wildcards are going to be removed for a patch or two to test, to see how the game plays without it, and to see what the balance is like. So big changes, and certainly looking forward to see what that is like. Now, as I said, this is going to be patch 1.27. So let's jump in and see what is changing. Now, as mentioned, we did have a couple of new cards. We spoke about them in yesterday's video. We'll just go through them quickly here for you today. So we've got the Scrap Tunnels, which is a building, a scrap building. It's got Impatient. It summons 3 scraps every 5 seconds, and it has the emergency tunneling ability where you can move it around. The second card is an Empyrean spell. This sends a Blade Star spinning out from your master, deals 100 damage to everything it hits. 50 damage to the tower. If it hits something that it doesn't kill, it then bounces off and carries on, so it can bounce around up to its 5 seconds total travel time. The next thing we saw a new skin. So we got a new skin dropping, which is going to be the Jade Stalker skin for Wrecked. Fairly cool looking update there for Wrecked. Now, as mentioned, balance changes. So in version 1.26, there was a lot of changes with regards to XP and mana generation. Those are being tweaked a little bit here. Now, the figures we're going to be looking at here are in relation to pre-tweak, so in relation to 1.25. So what the devs have said regarding the mana generation, we've been gathering feedback to reflect on the mana changes we made. And combined with our own experience, we feel like the 1v1 mana is mostly correct, but we want a slightly bigger curve over the match and give people a bit more time to get into the game, whilst in 2v2 we feel we went a bit too far, especially late game. So what they're going to be doing, the changes here, so we got the maximum, the mana generation, in 1v1 in comparison to 1.25. The starting mana generation was increased by 10, it's now only going to be a 5% increase. And the 2v2, again, it was increased by 15%. It's now only going to be a 10% increase. And there was a 10% maximum mana generation increase. That's going to be wiped out, and we're going to be back to the previous 1.25 version of the maximum mana generation. Okay, so the mana generation is going to be scaled back a little bit. But what about the balances to masters? Well, we've got some master balances coming along. So we got a change to Mordar. So remember, in the last patch, his tombstones were changed where they would give a resurrection and the unit would have the HP in relation to how long the tombstone had been charged. Now, this is going to be a nerf in this patch for Mordar. The tombstone minimum charge for resurrection is now 50%. So it was 25%, it's now 50%. That means instead of it taking 5 seconds before it can resurrect something, it now takes 10 seconds before it can resurrect something. So there is a nerf to Mordar. Valorian is next. Now, Valorian's been very strong on the leaderboard at the moment, especially in solos. Now, Valorian's going to have a nerf. His heal is going to be nerfed. So if you're not familiar, his perk heals 5 injured friendly minions every 5 seconds. And that's going to be reduced from 18 down to 13. So that's quite a big chunk of healing removed. And of course, remember, the healing is doubled at perk 3, so the reduction in this nerf is then doubled for perk 3. So quite a significant change there for Valorian. And Morelia, small change for Morelia. The Queen's Dragon, that's the perk 3 that you get. That's going to be a 9 mana cost instead of an 8 mana cost. So a small change there, a small nerf for Morelia. Now, card changes. What have we got? Okay, Flightless Dragon Whelps. Now, the devs have noted here that this is one of the top 5 best for performing cards. So it's going to get slightly nerfed. Now the cost is going to be increased from 4 to 5 mana. Now importantly, that means it can no longer be an APEP perk 3 card. And that's a very good card to get from APEP. So that's going to be a bit of a nerf there from that point of view. But all Dragon Whelps are going to get their attack cooldown reduced from 1.2 seconds to 1 second. So all Dragon Whelps, their DPS is going to go up. So that's going to be things like just the regular Dragon Whelp, which since it can no longer take bridges, tended to get overlooked. That's going to get a DPS increase now. And all other Dragon Whelps are going to feel that change. Now, snipers have been a huge problem, or a very, very strong meta in the latest update. Now here, I'm not sure, and I couldn't quite get this clarified in time, but I'm not sure if this is just the bounty sniper or all snipers. I'll clarify that as soon as I can. But the documentation I was given, it says bounty sniper attack cooldown has been increased from 3.5 to 4 seconds. So specifically for the bounty sniper, that means not only is its DPS reduced, but it will be able to generate less XP. Okay, and then we've got the warrior, divine warrior, zealots, and Aveya. Now this is an important one because the zealots of the Burning Fist have been very strong in the current meta. So they're going to be addressed here. Now these are all going to get a health reduction. They currently have 400 health. It's going to go down to 350 health. And remember, the zealots will feel this a lot because they do the self damage when they attack. So that's a big change that should bring the zealots maybe into a more balanced position. Okay, next up is the Lost Legionnaires. Now, Lost Legionnaires, very strong card for the mana. You do see them a lot. Now, we're going to see a change here. Now, the Lost Legionnaires are no longer going to get Rage from the Imperium Army buff. They're going to get Shield instead. So overall, they should be weaker because of that. In certain situations, the Shield will definitely help if they're against Cleavers or Colossuses or things like that. But overall, that's going to be a reduction in the overall value there of the Lost Legionnaires. Stormy. Okay, so Stormy, the Zenshi Flow, instead of giving it extra HP, it's going to give the ability to stun enemies in the range when it spawns. So similar to the Jinlong, where when you spawn it, it has the shock-in re-entry. Stormy's going to do a similar thing. The devs note that it's been a troublesome card for a long time, especially in lower ranks, and when combined with spirits, shrooms, and healing, it can be a bit of a nightmare. Now, by limiting the amount of extra health Stormy can get, we hope to make her easier to handle. Stormy's a girl. Giving her a spawn, stun in exchange should keep balance somewhat equal in the less extreme abusive situations. Okay, so there's a change there for Stormy. Next up, werewolves. Okay, so some changes here for just werewolves overall. They will no longer transfer buffs. So if you play Once Bitten on a Stixie, you will no longer get an invisible werewolf. If you play it on a Tantrum Thrower, you will no longer get a raged werewolf, etc., etc. But the werewolves overall are getting a buff. Their attack cooldown is going down from 1.1 to 0.9 seconds. So that's an overall DPS boost for werewolves in general. And of course, many cards, or at least a few cards, will fill those changes. So here we have the Howling Moon. Now, Howling Moon is simply getting a cost increase from 7 to 8. Now, that's been a very well performing card at the moment. And with the buff to werewolves, the devs feel that it's appropriate to increase the cost of it to make it more balanced. Lone Wolf. Now, Lone Wolf, the devs say here, Lone Wolf has been a bad card for a long time. But maybe that's about to change. So, what are we going to see? Well, firstly, it's going to have a cost reduction, down from 5 to 4 mana. What that means, again, is that's going to be available in APEP, Perk 3. Just a small thing, but something to consider. Now, the way it's going to work now is, if you have other units out, it will summon a Raged Warrior. If there are no other units out, it will summon a raged werewolf. So there's no longer that middle thing where you get a warrior that turns into a werewolf. You're either going to get a warrior or you're going to get a werewolf. So that's a lone wolf change. Hopefully that should make that a bit stronger, and we should see that get some more play. Now here's a relatively big change, the wall. Now the wall, of course, the most simplistic of cards, but a very, very strong thing to have in your deck. Now the devs have said here, wall is one of the reasons for the mana frenzy game we've been seeing for a long time. Having 2 mana shut down a big push for a reasonably long time in range of the Masters is too much value, especially in 2v2s. By making the wall less tanky but more of a fighting building, we hope to get it in a more healthy spot. So what are they changing? Well, the health is going to be reduced significantly from 700 down to 300. But this wall can fight back. Melee attackers will now take 50% damage in return. So the wall won't be able to tank so much, but it will be able to output some damage. So that's an interesting change, and it'll be interesting to see that in action and see how that affects the flow of the game. But we're not done yet. Some more relatively big changes. Stun Lancers. Now, Stun Lancers are a very strong card, and a card you see very, very often. Now, get ready for it. No longer stuns on every attack. It has a stunning strike. The first attack to a minion stuns that minion for 5 seconds. Following? It stuns a minion for 5 seconds. It no longer stuns a minion continuously. Once it moves on to the next minion, again, it will stun it for 5 seconds. So you can no longer just stun something and just say, oh, I've got a Colossus. It's stun locked at the top. It'll die eventually. Let me deal with something else. Now you have to deal with that threat. So that's overall a change to how Stun Lancers are working, and overall I would say definitely a nerf to that. Now Propeller Scrats and Propeller Horde. Now again, this change is in a bit of relation to the fact that flying units can no longer take bridges. So they're trying to buff them a little bit to make them more of an interesting and usable card. So their attack cooldown is going to go down from 1 to 0.9 seconds. Overall DPS increase. And now for the Propeller Horde, if you have a raged unit out to trigger it, instead of summoning 2 more, you get 4 more. So just straight up extra value. Layla's Vortex. Now that was a card that was hugely in the meta for a while. Then it got changed and nerfed and really dropped out of the meta, with different spells being more of a beneficial proposition. So that's going to get a little nerf here. Sorry, a little buff here. Sorry, a little buff. Damage from 50 up to 65. So it'll be able to kill snipers with shields, for example. Now things like that. So that's going to be something that maybe we'll see more Vortex play. That was a card I really did enjoy, and maybe this will bring it back to the forefront of people's minds. Zeppelin Bomber. Zeppelin Bomber, the devs say Zeppelin Bomber has been invisible for a long time now. You very rarely see this played. It's going to get a buff, attack cooldown 1.6 to 1.4 seconds. Will it give you a reason to use it? I don't know. I feel like it's a card that's struggled for a long time, and the fact it can no longer take bridges really makes it a very niche card. But we'll see. We'll see. Now here's an interesting change. Troubadour. So this is something that I mentioned to the devs, and they're responding to it here. There's been a cheesy tactic of getting a Troubadour to face and black holing it to get almost entire uncontested hits on face. So basically what that means is the Troubadour hits face, you black hole it, it pops back out and hits face again. And of course when it does huge amounts of damage, that's a problem. Now that's going to be addressed in a couple of ways. Firstly, no wildcards means you can't have a ton of black holes. But secondly, what they're doing is they're changing it. Instead of it doing one massive attack, it's going to do more smaller attacks. So the attack cooldown is going to be reduced from 4.5 seconds to 1.5 seconds, but the damage is going to be also increased from 300. Sorry, decreased from 300 to 100. So overall it will do the same amount of damage, but it will do it in little bursts. Boom, 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 boom. So I think that's a nice change, and we'll look forward to seeing that out there. Now, Frostfeather Flyby, the devs have said here, it's one of the best spells in the game right now. And I would agree. One of the reasons is it didn't get nerfed when everything else got nerfed. So they're making some changes to that. First of all, they're reducing the speed of the owls. And they are also reducing the range of the owls. So what that means is that the units you're using it on have a better chance of defending themselves against it. So the devs here have said we want to lean deeper into the idea of the spell being used against minions to make them move slower. Because their range is reduced, they have to get closer to the target. And they said that this way the ranged units, especially AoE ranged units, and significantly reduce the damage, if not stop it entirely. So it's easier the units are easier to defend themselves against the flyby, and that should be overall a nerf for the flyby. A few more to go. Sunburn. So the damage on the sunburn is going to be reduced from 100 to 80. That's a very strong spell at the moment. It's because people are using snipers so much. Sunburn is a great counter to that. The damage reduced from 100 to 80. We got Wolf Among Sheep. Now, Wolf Among Sheep is a very meta card at the moment, very strong. So what the devs have said is Wolf Among Sheep is overperforming and completely outshining Legionnaires. So the cost is going to go up from 6 to 7. But remember, you're getting a better werewolf. The werewolves are, as we saw earlier, do get buffed. So it's going to be more expensive, but you'll get a better wolf. Now, Nirvir's Breath. Now, Nirvir's Breath has been a problem in duos, and that's going to get some balanced here. Again, the removal of wildcards will help soften Nirvir's Breath's impact on games, but it's also getting some changes as well. So, pre-Ascension, no longer spawns skeletons. So before you've hit a Cursed Ascension, you'll get no bridge control from it. After Ascension, once you've reached it, it spawns skeletons as currently. And also, it's getting a damage change. So at the moment, it does 180 damage, and then at an Ascension, another 120, so 300 in total. That's going to be changed to 2 lots of 130. So overall, the damage is going to go down from 300 to 260. So, for example, it will no longer be able to kill a Bara once you're at Ascension, or at any state. So hopefully that'll bring things into line a little bit. Now, we've got a few more to go through here. Razor Squadron. That's very strong. We see that a lot on the ladder at the moment. Tax per tick, 4 up to 5. That means the damage that it takes, not the damage it takes, but that's how much Outlander tech it burns per tick. So it's going to burn through the tech more quickly and then start damaging itself at a faster rate. ATG Drone, HP reduced from 250 to 225. Harbinger and Herald Our Moon, HP reduced from 270 to 250. Okay, so those are the unit changes. I know this has been quite a long video, but there's a lot of changes. We're nearly there. One big thing to mention, one mechanic change, spirits. Now, spirits, especially on small units like snipers, have been a problem, and there's going to be some changes. Now, so the devs have said spirits are just too good on swarms or glass cannons and too weak on bigger units. So they're going to make some changes. So remember, the way spirits work at the moment is it gives 200 extra HP to a ground unit or 100 extra HP to a flying unit. No more. What's going to happen is the health boost is going to be, the spirit's going to be worth 50% of the max health of the unit, up to a maximum of 300. And they're also going to remove the flying variant, so there's no difference between ground units or air units with regards to spirits anymore. Every unit that gets hit by a spirit gets an extra 50% of its max health, up to 300. So we got some examples here very quickly. A Scrat, instead of getting 200 health, would only get 7.5 health. A Sniper Scrat, instead of getting 200, will now get just 25. A Succubus, instead of 200, only 100. But things like the Harbinger, the flying units, remember they would have only previously got 100. Something like the Harbinger would get 125. And here the Colossus would get the maximum 300. And there we see the removal of the flying variant. So some huge changes there to the way that spirits work. They're no longer going to be super strong on small units. So that's be very interesting to see how that pans out, how people decide to use the spirits, and if the spirit cards that we see in play at the moment are going to get much, going to see much play, more play, less play. Who knows? We'll find out. There's also a bunch of bug fixes. They'll be up on the website. As soon as I've got a link that I can share, I'll put it in the description for you. But that's basically all the changes that we've got. So just to recap, we've got the mana generation dropping a little bit. We've got some changes to some masters, some changes to some cards. Spirits getting massively reworked. Lots of cool stuff coming. Wildcards being removed. This Thursday, the 5th of August. Make sure you check out Minion Masters. Remember, the removal of wildcards is a test, so it's important that as many of us as possible try it out. Whether you're a wildcard lover or hater or somewhere in between, try it out, see what you think. Make sure you give some feedback in any of the forms available, on the Reddit, on the Discord, wherever. Let Be the Dwarf know what you think, good or bad, and hopefully together we will enjoy Minion Masters in the next patch and going forward. Now, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Quite a long video, but there was a lot of changes. If you've got any questions, let me know what you think about any of the changes down in the description, in the comments. Let me know. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon here in the fish tank. My name's BadestFish80, and you guys look after yourself. Goodbye.